Picture this. You are kneeling on the cold, uneven flagstones of a shadowed town square in 14th century York, England, the bite of early dawn mist clinging to your thin woolen shift like a lover's reluctant breath. Iron manacles chafe your wrists, their rust-flecked weight pulling your arms forward, forcing your head to bow as the first grey light filters through the overhanging timber eaves of the Guildhall. Nearby, the executioner's apprentice stirs a brazier, its coals glowing like malevolent eyes, the acrid temps of heated metal mingling with the earthy reek of fresh horse dung from the cobbled street. Your bare feet press into the gritty stone, numb from the night's chill in the lock-up cell where straw scratched your skin and distant moans echoed off damp walls. A rough hand calloused from rope and whip grips your shoulder, positioning you before the gathering crowd, apprentices yawning into their hoods, merchants' wives clutching shawls against the damp, children peering from skirts with wide, unblinking eyes. This is the moment of the scold's bridal, whispered about in every hearthside tale. Its iron bite reserved for women whose tongues dared too much. Feel the tremor in your knees as the device is lifted, its curved bit cold against your lips, promising silence where words once flowed free. If these whispers of forgotten cruelties draw you in, welcome to Whispers of History, where we uncover the intimate shadows of the past. Wherever you're listening from tonight, perhaps curled under a quilt in a quiet room, or drifting towards sleep with the rain tapping your window, thank you for joining this journey. If these stories resonate, consider subscribing for more gentle explorations of history's hidden breaths. Your support keeps these tales alive. The bridle's iron frame settles heavy across your cheeks, the bit thick as a blacksmith's thumb, forked to cradle your tongue, forcing its way past your teeth with a metallic temps that floods your mouth like bitter ironwort. Your jaw aches instantly, stretched wide, saliva pooling uselessly as you try to swallow, each breath a labored rasp through flared nostrils. The lock clicks shut at the nape of your neck, the chain dangling like a leash between your breasts, tugging with every involuntary shift. Rough hands adjust the straps, leather biting into your temples, and suddenly you're led forward, stumbling on numb feet. The crowd partying with murmurs that swell like a distant tide. Feel the gravel shift under your soles, each step grinding pebbles into tender skin, the bridle's weight pulling your head down in enforced humility. This is no mere restraint. It's a reclamation of order, born from medieval codes where a woman's voice too sharp, too insistent threatened the fragile weave of village harmony. Church fathers preached it from pulpits carved with serpents, the tongue as Eve's curse, loosed upon the world, demanding curb and bit. You taste blood now, where teeth grazed the bit's edge, a copper warmth trickling down your throat as the procession weaves through narrow lanes. Faces press close, neighbors whose bread you've broken, whose children you've minded, their breaths fogging the air inches from your own. Eyes alight with that mix of pity and righteous thrill. A stone skips across the cobbles, glancing your shin, drawing a muffled gasp that emerges as wet gurgle, spit dribbling down your chin to soak the shift's neckline. The bridle muffles cries to pathetic whines, your world reduced to the sway of the chain, the relentless pull forward, the growing burn in stretched jaw muscles. In taverns and market stalls, men nod approval. This device, forged in Scottish smithies, by 1300 migrated south on trade roads. Its prongs customized, sometimes barbed for gossips, plain for mere nags always, with a padlock etched by local ironsmiths who knew its measure by heart. Feel the intimacy of constraint, how it binds not just flesh but spirit, whispering that survival lies in stillness, in the slow surrender to iron's unyielding embrace. Hours blur as you're paraded past the minster's looming spire, its bells tolling terse like judgments from on high. The sun climbs, warming the metal against your skin, sweat trickling beneath the frame to sting abraded corners of your mouth. Children trail now, chanting scold, scold, their small fists clutching filth from gutters, pelting your hem until it clings sodden and heavy. Your throat works futilely, longing for water, for the simple mercy of a sip, but the bit denies even that, turning thirst into a throbbing pulse. This punishment radialed outward from simple silencing, for husbands shamed by nagging, for midwives whose herbal counsel veered to wise, for widows bartering too shrewdly at stalls. Records from York's court rolls, inked by clerks with quills dipped in oak gall. Tally dozens yearly women like you, accused by kin or rival, fitted and walked until tongues swelled and wills bent. The crowd's proximity presses in, their woolen cloaks brushing your arms, breaths carrying ale and onion. A tapestry of communal breath enforcing solitude in shame. Yet within this cage of iron and eyes, fragments of tenderness persist the apprentice's averted gaze as he steadies you over a rut. The wife's hesitant pat on your chained shoulder, gone before noticed. The bridal teaches survival through erasure. Your voice, once a bridge to others, now a prisoner in your own mouth. Salivas drip the only eloquence left. As the square reappears, the brazier still smouldering, feel the first loosening of straps, the bits withdrawal like birth in reverse, jaw throbbing, numbly free. But freedom carries its echo, the swollen tongue, the haunted eyes of watchers, the knowledge that words, once loosed, invite chains anew. And as you're released to stagger homeward, ankles raw and spirit bruised, the whispers begin, not just of this bridal, but of ducking stools waiting by riverbanks, their wooden seats slick with prior tears. Their wooden seats slick with prior tears, waiting to plunge defiant women into the icy grip of river currents. You stumble toward the water's edge now, the bridal's echo still throbbing in your jaw. A dull ache that mirrors the raw sting of your ankles where gravel has abraded skin to bloody wheels. The crowd surges ahead, their boots churning mud into the air, a fine mist settling on your lashes as you near the ooze's sluggish flow. Its surface rippling like oiled silk under the climbing sun. Rough hands seize your elbows, village constables, their breath hot with morning ale stripping. Away the sodden shift to leave you bare, save for a threadbare smock, the fabric clinging translucent to chilled flesh. Feel the ducking stools splintered oak beneath you, ropes creaking as they bind wrists and ankles, the seat tilting precarious over the bank where rushes whisper against weed-choked pilings. This is the cucking stool's cold embrace. Born in 13th century market towns to drown out women's discord gossips, Brewsters selling short measure. Wives whose barbs pierced husbands' pride, plunging body and spirit into watery silence. The first drop steals your breath, icy water closing over your head like a shroud. The river's chill invading nostrils, flooding mouth with silt and minnow temps as you thrash against unyielding ropes. Bubbles erupt frantic from your lips, lungs burning for air that comes only in gasping reprieves. Hold upward sputtering, hair plastered like black weeds across eyes streaming salt. The crowd's roar swells distant through water, muffling veil laughter laced with sermons on. Eve's flood of words, then you redunked again, longer this time, weeds snagging ankles like vengeful fingers. The stools tilt, grinding splinters into your spine. Feel the intimacy of submersion, how it strips away voice and vanity, leaving only the primal rhythm of breath begged from indifferent waves. Court rolls from London's bridge ward, scrawled in 1370s. Vellum record Brewsters, like Alice La Brewer, ducked thrice for false ale. Her body, fished sodden from the Thames lungs, heavy with punishment's logic, drown the tongue's rebellion until it learns humility. Each surfacing brings new humiliation, coughing weeds and bile, smock translucent against shivering skin. Neighbors' eyes tracing curves, once hidden by hearthside decency. Yet survival whispers in the pauses, the rope handler's fleeting mercy in a quicker pull. The sun's hesitant warmth on dripping lashes, the shared rhythm of your heaving chest sinking with the river's lap. Pulled finally to shore, unbound on quivering legs, water pools at your feet, mingling with crowd-flung filth. You taste mud and riverweed, long after the stool's creak fades. This watery trial radialed into village justice, evolving from simple dunkings to tumbrel carts paraded through streets. Women lashed 2 seats above murky streams, dunked until lips turned blue and wills softened like sodden cloth. In Flemish towns by 1400, records etched in civic ledgers, tally fishwives plunged for market quarrels, their screams bubbling into enforced peace. Bodies emerging pruned and penitent, forever marked by water's chill kiss. The ducking's philosophy lingers in your bones, constraint as rebirth, where near drowning forges silence from struggle, turning women's fire to vapor under communal gaze. Shivering ascent from the bank leads through pressing bodies, their woolen hems brushing your sodden form, whispers of repent. shrew blending with the drip from your hair striking cobbles like hesitant tears. Homeward now, past the baker's oven, spilling yeast-warm air that teases without warming. Past the churchyard, where crosses lean like silent witnesses. But rest eludes. Accusations branch wider, from tongues lashed to bodies. Betrayal whispers of pear-shaped horrors, forged for those whose sins veered intimate. Devices that bloomed like iron flowers within forbidden flesh. Feel the first prickle of deeper dread as shadows lengthen toward the smithy, where coals glow, promising crueler intimacies, waiting to claim women whose crimes touched the sacred bounds of hearth and womb. Waiting to claim women whose crimes touched the sacred bounds of hearth and womb. Their iron petals forged in the dim glow of Bavarian smithies around 1350, blooming only in chambers of judgment where screams echoed off stone vaults. You are dragged now into the undercroft of the Guildhall, the air thick with coal smoke and the sour reek of unwashed fear sweat from prior souls. Your wrists rebound to a low beam that forces a stoop spine curving like a bow under tension. Torchlight flickers across the torturer's scarred hands as he unveils the pair of anguish pear-shaped iron. Its segmented lobes cold and unyielding, handle protruding like a sinner's tail, sized cruelly for intimate invasion. Feel the violation begin as skirts are hiked. The device's tip pressed against your most private warmth, then twisted slowly. Each click of the screw parting the lobes like a mechanical flower unfurling within, stretching tender flesh to tearing limits. This is the vaginal pair's intimate savagery, reserved for witches consorting with Satan, adulteresses dilating forbidden desires, midwives inducing unnatural barrenness, women whose bodies dared defy patriarchal decree. The expansion sends fire lancing through your core, each ratchet turn a fresh agony that buckles knees to gravel-strewn floor, breath hitching in shallow gasps as muscles clench futile against the inexorable bloom. Salty tears carve tracks down cheeks, mingling with sweat that beads cold on your nape. The chambers chill, amplifying every quiver rippling through bound limbs. Inquisitors circle close, their Cossacks whispering like judgments, breath hot on your ear as they murmur psalms of purification. The pair's pressure building to a symphony of internal rupture, flesh yielding. Blood's copper warmth trickling down thighs to pools sticky between feet splayed in restraint. Feel the philosophy of penetration, punishment mirroring sin. The device's growth echoing accusations of carnal excess, turning womb's sanctuary into scaffold of shame. Bavarian court confessions, extracted under Nuremberg's 1400 edicts and inked in trembling script, detail dozens heretics, like Margarethe of Passau, pair-screwed until recanting demonic unions, her body forever hollowed by iron's bloom. Survival clings in the pauses between turns, the torturer's calloused thumb steadying your hip with unwitting gentleness, a reminder that even cruelty shares humanity's breath. Rectal variants branched for sodomites, but for women. The pair radialed into gendered anatomies or pairs, silencing blasphemous tongues. All screwed to confession's brink where pain birthed truth or madness. Hours stretch in that undercroft, the device's weight a constant drag. Each shift grinding lobes against ravaged walls, urine's hot trickle escaping control to mingle with blood's slow seep. Released at last, collapsed in a heap as the pair retracts with slick retraction. Feel the void, it leaves aching emptiness where fullness once defined you. Skirts lowered with trembling hands over thighs marbled purple. Staggering into twilight streets, neighbors' averted eyes burn hotter than the pair's memory. Whispers trailing like shadows. Healer turned poisoner, wife turned wanton. Yet tenderness persists in fragments. The healer's herbal poultice slipped into palm, cool against fevered skin. The night's hush wrapping bruises like a shroud. The pair's legacy lingered in loosened teeth from oral kin, in limps from rectal scars, but accusations flowered wider still. Toward breasts, the nurturing swell now targeted by rippers, clawed like iron spiders. Heated, red-hot for adulteresses and abortionists whose milk mocked purity. As you hobble toward the pillory silhouette under emerging stars, feel the dread coil deeper. Chains rattling promise of claws that would rend maternal flesh from bone, drawing forth not just blood, but the very essence of womanhood's defiance. drawing forth not just blood, but the very essence of womanhood's defiance, its iron claws for, or more curved like talons, from hell forged in Rhineland. Forges by 1400, heated to cherry glow for maximum torment in public squares where saints' relics watched unmoved. You are hauled now to the pillory's weathered oak, wrists and neck locked in unyielding embrace. The wood splinters pricking sweat-slick skin as your bodice is ripped away, exposing breasts to the noonday glare and crowd's voracious gaze. The executioner approaches, device smoking in tongs from the brazier, its prongs radiating heat that singes arm hairs before contact, then clamps with a hissing agony exploding as metal bites deep, flesh yielding like wax under branding iron. The pull beginning slow, deliberate, ripping tissue in ragged strips amid screams that rend the air. This is the breast ripper's maternal mutilation, meted to adulteresses, cuckolding husbands, witches nursing familiars, abortionists severing life's thread women, whose nurturing flesh symbolized sins against divine order. Fire consumes first, skin bubbling black where claws latch, then the wrenching tear as the spider is yanked free. Arteries spurting hot arcs that paint your torso crimson, ribs heaving in shock as milk ducts rupture, a metallic flood pouring from sundered swells. Breath comes in ragged sobs, vision blurring through pain's white haze. The crowd's cheers, a distant roar blending with your own raw keening. Each heartbeat pumping fresh torment through ravaged nerves. Feel the intimacy of desecration, how it targets creations. Seat breasts once suckled babes, now fountains of shame. Their ruin a communal sacrament, enforcing wifely fidelity, maternal purity. Inquisition ledgers from Bavaria, quilled in 1490 amid which panics. Catalogue victims like Ilse of Augsburg, ripper-clawed for devil's teats, her confessions scrawled, blood-smeared, body displayed broken on the gibbet as warning to daughters. Survival flickers in the haze, the bystander's flung cloak veiling your bareness, cool linen a fleeting mercy on burns that weep clear serum. Public execution amplified the ripper's radial reach, cold variants for lesser sins like gossip-fueled slander, heated for heresy where flesh tore clean to pectoral bone, sometimes followed by cauterization, sealing wounds in sizzle of finality. Hours in the pillory stretch, eternal, sun-baking crusted gore, flies clustering to probe raw craters, each wing beat a needle's prick amid throbbing voids where fullness once curved soft. Released at dusk, supported by pitying kin whose hands tremble on your bandaged form. Feel the phantom weightlessness, shifts chafing empty chest, mirrors henceforth avoided lest reflections mock survival's cost. Neighbors whisper of saints like Agatha, martyred similarly in Sicily's ancient rite, echoed medievally. Her breasts on a platter, inspiring rippers design torture, borrowing hagiography's gore for earthly justice. Yet philosophy weaves through the scars, breasts as battleground of control, their mutilation reclaiming bodies loaned to husbands, church, state turning nurturers to spectacles, enforcing silence via spectacle. Staggering homeward under star-bricked sky, herbal compresses cooling fevered skin slipped by midwife's covert hand, tenderness defies the ripper's legacy. But branches spread darker still, two spinning horrors, the Judas cradles, pyramidal kiss awaiting heretics' weight, or foot presses crushing bones of wandering wives. Intimacies of pain reserved for those whose steps strayed too far from hearth's constraint. Intimacies of pain reserved for those whose steps strayed too far from hearth's constraint. The Judas cradles, pyramidal, throne wooden or iron. Apex honed, wicked sharp erected in Spanish Inquisition dungeons by 1500. Their whispers claim earlier Italian births. Its slow impalement, a betrayal-s mimicry for heretics and witches whose bodies betrayed faith through wandering lusts or Sabbath flights. You are lowered now into the taw's shadowed bowels, fetid air thick with mold and despair's musk ropes, biting wrists hoisted high, ankles weighted with iron shackles that drag you inexorably toward the cradle's peak naked. Save for tattered shift hiked cruelly aside. Feel the tip kiss first cold. Unyielding point nudging tender cleft between buttocks or vulvas. Fold then gravity's betrayal as descent begins. Millimeter by millimeter, the pyramid breaching resistance with white-hot lance of invasion. Stretching anus or vagina around its girth as muscles scream in futile spasm. Weight bears down, relentless, each quiver amplifying penetration. Pelvic bones grinding against unmerciful wedge. Blood's warm seep lubricating the tear as flesh parts layer by layer. Bowels compressing in nausea that rises bile to throat. Breath fractures into whimpers, sweat sheeting cold down spine to mingle with crimson rivulets, tracing thighs. The ropes creak, a metronome to agony's swell. Vision tunneling to the cradle's blood-stained wood where prior victim stains form dark patina. Inquisitors murmur nearby, incense-heavy breaths brushing your cheek. Their chants invoking Judas's drop 30 pieces, mirrored in 30 hours of torment. Designed not for swift death, but confession's drip, turning body against self in intimate treachery. Spanish archives from Toledo's 1530s tribunals. Bound in calfskin slick with secrets, record women like Catalina Labruggia, cradled until recanting flying ointments, her pelvis sundered, spilling viscera in final plea. Survival haunts the sway tormentors, occasional rock gentling the drop. A twisted mercy prolonging breath for more revelations. The cradle radialed variants, spiked tips for blasphemers, heated bases charring flesh below, weights appended to feet hastening rupture. All enforcing gravity's judgment on women's lowly vessels prone to satanic rides. Hours bleed into eternity, thighs quaking numb. The point now hilt deep, carving upward toward womb's cradle. Each heartbeat pulsing fresh violation, urine's involuntary stream hissing steam on warmed wood. Hoisted free at twilight confession, body crumples in slick heap. Eviscerated cavity gaping like accusation. Midwives' forbidden salves, cooling fevered ruin, slipped past guards' eyes. Staggering through torchlit corridors, robes draped loose over hollowed frame. Feel the phantom pierce lingering in every step, shifts whispering against raw intimacy. Yet philosophy threads the gore, body as Judas, betraying soul through flesh's frailties. The cradle's kiss reclaiming wayward wombs for purity's throne. Emerging into night air, crisp with river mist. Kin's arms enfold with hushed tenderness, herbal draughts numbing the void. But tendrils reach further, to foot crushers' vice and rack's merciless stretch. Iron boots heating for wanderers whose souls carried them beyond husband's leash. Or thumbscrews pinching digits of defiant healers. But first, the foot presses crushing Viceran boots laced tight over bare soles, wedges hammered home in Spanish tribunals by 1450 bones, splintering like dry twigs under methodical blows for women whose wanderings mocked marital chains, witches, fleeing to Sabbaths, or gossips whose steps carried tales too far. You were chained now in the Tor's alcove, flickering rushlight casting long shadows on dripping walls. Ankles locked into hinged cages that clamp like jaws. Leather straps biting calves as the bootmaker face shadowed. Under hood begins the lacing. Each pull drawing iron plates inward until toes curl, white-knuckled against unyielding steel. Feel the first wedge's kiss, wooden edge cold against arch. Then the hammer's swing thud, reverberating up tibia. Metatarsals cracking sequential. Agony blooming from heels to knees in shockwaves that buckle spine against stone. This is the foot crusher's ambulatory annihilation, radialed from Roman stocks to medieval mobility's curb. Pulverizing souls of Brewsters evading measures, healers treading forbidden herb paths, wives straying to lovers' barns. Pressure mounts inexorable, each hammerfall compressing phalanges to pulp, blood vessels bursting in hot pulses that soak boot linings. Nails loosening with wet pops, amid screams echoing off vaulted arches like damned soul's chorus. Breath hitches shallow, sweat sheeting forehead to sting eyes. The Inquisitor's breath garlic and parchment warm on your neck as he recites accusations of errant feet carrying errant souls. Wedges multiplying until arches collapse inward. Tibia fracturing with audible snap that vibrates through pelvis. Feel the intimacy of locomotion's theft. Feet as freedom's root, now mangled roots. Survival hinging on stillness, where steps once danced hearthside jigs or fled dawn raids. Toledo's 1480s Inquisition folios, illuminated with marginal demons, tally victims like Maria la Vagabunda, boot-crushed for night flights, her confessions gasped amid crimson squirts, feet thereafter clubbed stubs, unfit for pilgrimage or flight. Tenderness glimmers faint, the bootman's hesitant pause. wiping hammer sweat with thumb that brushes your ankle fleetingly soft. Variants branched crueler, heated boots, steaming flesh to broth inside, spikes inward perforating with dissent, or stocks evolving to presses for public squares, where crowds watched bones yield. Hours grind on, boots pride-free revealing pulped masses bones, protruding like snapped kindling. Skin split to expose glistening tendon sheened with blood mud, midwives, salves forbidden, lest healing aid, heresy. Hoisted limp on ropes, dragged through corridors where cool flagstones mock ruined souls. Feel phantom itches in immobile feet, shifts dragging over raw stumps. Released to kin's cart under moon-pale sky, herbal compressors, cooling fever swells, slipped covertly. Whispers of saints like Christina of Bolsena, whose crushed feet bled milk, not blood. Philosophy pulses through fractures, feet as fidelity's tether. Their crush chaining souls to hearth's radius, turning wanderlust to rooted penance. Yet accusations stride onward. To rack merciless elongation ropes, hauling limbs for witches. Confessions, or Iron Maiden spiky embrace, awaiting those whose hearts beat too fiercely against silence yoke. Or Iron Maiden's spiky embrace, awaiting those whose hearts beat too fiercely against silence's yoke. The Iron Maiden itself, icon of medieval cruelty, yet shrouded in myth more than solid reality. You find yourself in a cold, torchlit chamber lined with stone. Shadows long and flickering, the scent of damp mortar heavy in the air. Before you stands a towering, coffin-shaped cabinet of iron, its interior rumored to be lined with spikes, a monstrous shell of punishment. Fingers trace along the smooth, cold steel, and though its menacing door stands open now, the spectre of claustrophobic confinement chills your breath like winter's clasp. Historically, this device's dread arose mostly centuries after medieval times, fueled by sensational tales and dark curiosity, rather than actual widespread employment. It wasn't until the 18th or 19th century that accounts surfaced popularizing the Iron Maiden as a torture instrument, but evidence of its medieval use is scarce, if existent at all. Yet legend breathes life into iron's heart, its spikes placed strategically inside not for swift death, but for slow agony, meant to impale without piercing vital organs, prolonging suffering in a tight, suffocating embrace. The door would close with a clang, trapping victim and terror alike in a shrieking silence only broken by muffled screams and labored breath. Stories told of how the spikes, cruelly positioned, would press against tender flesh holders, thighs, abdomen driving pain sharp as a winter frost, yet leaving just enough room to force prolonged awareness. This device, intertwined with the mythology of the Middle Ages, became the emblem of merciless justice, an archetype of fear that underscored the era's brutal ethos and the intensifying control over bodies deemed wayward or sinful. Imagine the psychological torture layered upon physical torment, the claustrophobic enclosure, the isolation in dark metal womb, the knowledge that escape was impossible, that every trembling breath brought spike-tipped agony closer. The medieval imagination, fueled by religious and social strictures, used the Iron Maiden as symbol as much as to illustrating the inescapable consequences for defiance, especially for women whose perceived transgressions unsettled patriarchal order. This fearsome image became a warning carved into the collective consciousness, even if the raw iron never clashed its deadly embrace on many flesh and bone. As you step back from the iron spectre, the torchlight dances, casting moving figures against cold walls, reflecting the brutal dance of power and submission that shaped medieval punishment. The Iron Maiden's ghost shares space with more proven realities: the rack's slow grinding elongation of limbs, the thumbscrew crushing verdict, the pillories, public shamed, with the quieter, more intimate violences tailored for women whose survival hinged on bending beneath shadows forged by society's harsh gaze. From this iron myth, the narrative stretches outward into whispered horrors of tortures tailored for the female body, punishments that echoed the era's contradictions, a world yearning for order through domination, yet haunted by the resilience of those it sought to break. Turning now to the rack's merciless elongation, a wooden frame of winches and rollers, ropes knotted cruel about wrists and ankles, deployed in Tower of London dungeons by 1400 for witches, whose confessions stretched truth from limb. adulteresses whose lies pulled sinew from bone. You lie supine now on splintered oak, slick with generations' sweat. Wrists lashed high to iron rings, ankles cinched low, the torturer's hands rough as hemp, scented with tallow cranking the first turn. Vertebrae popping, sequential like distant thunder as shoulders dislocate in fiery wrench. Feel the intimacy of extension, body pulled taut as lute string, ribs splaying wide beneath shift's tear. Breath shallowing to whimpers as lungs strain against expanding cage, every fiber screaming separation from self. Medieval justice radialed this Roman inheritance into gendered verdicts. Women healers stretching herbs to potent, wives whose tales elongated beyond husband's ear, their screams harmonizing with creaking axles in candlelit vaults. Tension builds inexorable, second crank hauling arms socket deep from shoulders. Femurs grinding acetabula in wet grinds. Blood vessels rupturing beneath skin that blooms purple welts like storm clouds over taut canvas. Vision fractures through tears, the rackmaster's breathal soured. Close as confessor, murmuring pleas for names of covenmates or lovers' lairs. Each revolution amplifying the tear, pelvic cradle widening toward rupture, where womb once cradled life. Feel survival's thread in the pauses, ropes sway granting micro-moments of slack. A dropped rag brushing fevered cheek with unintended softness. English royal records from Henry VI's reign, quilled amid wars of roses tumult. Log interrogations like Joan of Kenninghall, racked until confessing familiar spirits, limbs thereafter dangling useless, swaddled in kin's tender linens. The rack's philosophy whispers through dislocation, truth extracted like marrow from bone, bodies lengthened into honesty where silence once coiled tight. Variants branched for delicacy thumb racks, pinching digits of seamstresses gossiping thread counts. Or heretics' forks wedged twixt chin and breast-forcing nods of submission, but for women. Elongation targeted maternal cores, stretching bellies gravid with devil's seed. Hours dissolve in haze, finally cranked slack, body collapsing a quilting fold, joints clicking loose in aftershocks, midwives' forbidden bombs cooling swollen sockets slipped past iron grills, dragged through straw-strewn passages where torch smoke stings raw nostrils. Feel phantom pulls in every motion, shifts whispering against elongated scars. Yet resilience blooms amid ruin. Philosophy of the rack teaching bodies, betrayal yields not spirits, survival in the slow reckonet of tendon to bone under hearthside poultices, emerging into fog-shrouded courtyard. Kin's arms cradling floppy limbs with whispered endearments. Tenderness defies the stretch. But shadows lengthen to sharper prick-spiked chairs, searing flesh of blasphemous tongues. Or heretics' daughterboards, awaiting those whose final sins demanded flame's purifying kiss. Or heretics' daughterboards, awaiting those whose final sins demanded flame's purifying kiss, yet before pyres crackled the shrew's fiddle, claims wandering hands, and tongue's wooden yoke, carved fiddle-shaped in 14th century. German villager's neck, locked through wide iron-ringed slot wrists, pinioned helpless in smaller cuffs before face, forcing perpetual bowed head penance for women whose fingers itched toward forbidden herbs, or whose lips shaped barbs too sharp. You kneel now in the market square's churned mud, blacksmith's hammer ringing final rivet home, the fiddles oak-polished by prior brows, settling heavy across collarbones, chin jutting awkward over crossed forearms that dangle useless as broken wings. Feel the wood's unyielding bite, splinters pricking sweat-damp neck, every swallow tugging wrists against unmerciful iron, breath fogging the cage of your own immobilized hands mere inches from lips parched for speech. Paraded thus through lanes where market stalls spill apple tang and fish slime reek. The fiddle amplifies constraints, intimacy enabled to shield face from flung filth, to wipe mud from eyes, to clasp skirts against winds, prying chill that raises goose flesh on thighs. Neighbors press close, their woolen elbows brushing fiddle's curve, breaths hot with righteous murmurs, shrew tamed. For Brewster's shorting ale, healers brewing witches, draughts, wives whose slaps answered husbands' fists. Each futile headshake grinds neck raw, saliva pooling untended to drip chinward, soaking bodice in humiliation's slow seep. Bavarian town charters from 1350s, etched on weathered parchment. Mandate fiddles for handy gossips, Women like Greta of Nuremberg, yoked 3 days till wrists swelled black. Confessions whispered through barred fingers of kin transcribing her broken pleas. Survival lingers in stillness. The woods wait teaching surrender where struggle only deepened chafe. A dropped kerchief from sympathetic sleeve veiling your shame fleetingly soft. Radialed punishments bloomed from this. Double fiddles linking skull pairs face to trust face. Forcing mirrored humiliation till apologies synced like penance prayer. Spiked interiors for repeat offenders, puncturing palms with every twitch. Days blur in squares vigil, sun baking wood to fever heat against throat. Night dews slicking cuffs till rust flecked skin. Birds perching curious on outstretched arms like judgment's crows. Released at evensong's bell, wrists numb floppy neck, cricked eternal. Feel phantom hug of wood in every unresisted gesture, shifts whispering over abraded collarbones. Midwife's poultice, warm as mother's palm, slipped under hearth shadow, soothes the wheels, tenderness reclaiming what fiddle stole. Philosophy hums through the yoke, hands as agency denied, their cuffing, chaining not just motion but mischief. Turning women's touch once, bomb or slap, pinterfolded impotence before communal eyes. Staggering home under harvest moon's glow, kin's fingers massaging life back into digits with murmured endearments. Resilience defies the lock. Yet final branches smolder toward stake and flame burning, alive for witches whose Sabbaths scorched churchly peace. Barrels of brimstone awaiting those whose ultimate defiance courted hellfire's intimate roar. But final branches smolder toward stake and flame burning alive for witches whose Sabbaths scorched churchly peace. And for women accused of high crimes whose bodies became altar and sacrifice. You are led now across the village green, distant crowd murmuring like restless wind among dry leaves. The sun's heat pressing heavy on bare skin, soothed little by the coarse hemp shift rough against thighs. Feel the prick of fear sharpen as you are tied upright to a towering stake. Ropes biting wrists until knuckles blanch. Feet shackled, yet anchored on earth that trembles beneath the gathering mass. Around you, faggots stack thick, wood dry and hungry for ash, filling nose and throat with resin's sharp scent, mingled with sweat and prayer. The priest's voice rises in him. A cloak flutters across your shoulders, a final shroud, before flame's embrace all under watchful eyes, where salvation and damnation blur. The match lights the tinder, sparks cascading like stars fall into earth. Flame-licking fingers of dry wood until hunger awakes in earnest, a furnace rising slow and sure. Heat ripples through air, sweat clings to cracked lips, throat constricted not just by terror but by smoke's sting biting into lungs. You lift head with effort, eyes glazing over as tongues of fire flicker upward to caress flesh once nurtured breasts and held infants. Close skin blistering away in sheets of agony, nerves singeing into heightened awareness of every burning pore. Yet suffering bends time, seconds falter. Thoughts flicker between memories of cold hearth, warmth, and pain's searing reality. The crowd sways, some covering mouths with handkerchiefs, others entranced by death's theater, priests intoning salvation's promises lost amid crackling wrath. Confessions flit like fragile moths before flames, prayers dying in coughs, bodies succumbing slow to heat's relentless claim. Over minutes, hours, for some the fire dances higher, until flesh chars. Bone glows white beneath charcoal veil, a morbid metamorphosis from woman to ash. Executioners often strangled, condemned before flames claimed breath, a cruel mercy sparing prolonged agony. But many times, the pyre was witness to alive, terrified cries, swallowed only by the smoke rising skyward. This communion of pain, fear, and finality stretched across villages and kingdoms where law, church, and vengeance converged in ritual burning. The cruelty carried paradoxical intimacy, women exposed to the world, bare and vulnerable, stripped not only of body, but of dignity, their last breaths mingling with prayers and curses woven through history's tapestry. The pyre's glow faded, leaving only embers and echoes of resilience that have since whispered through centuries, shaping memory of those who bore this crucible. As night closes and stars peer cold above, imagine the quiet that follows, earth cooling over ash-smoothed ground, whispered legends cloaked in candlelight. The bones of women reborn, not just in bones but in stories, whispered beside hearths long after flames. Whispers of history that refuse silence, that demand remembrance, that shelter the fragile embers of intimacy, resistance, and the human will to endure.